Okay, hopefully you can follow along here and you don't mind the board noises. I noticed that when I write, it makes a few noises, but here we go. So we started this in class yesterday and we realized that we could write 2x also right there for TS because this WT, the T and W bisect the two sides. Okay. The other thing that we know is that Y or VR and VS are congruent. So based on those two things, I can write two sentences. I can write or two equations. I know that y plus 5 and x plus 4 are equal. And I also know that y plus 5 plus x plus 4 equals 4x. Now, how can I write that sentence there? The second one, I know that VS, the green and the red, are equal. So 4x, and then the VR, so this is really VR, and this is VS. I also know that VW is congruent to WR. So that's where I got my two expressions. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. And I'm going to subtract 5. So I have x minus, or y minus x equals -1. Over here, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Now that equals 0 on that right side if I subtract 9. Hopefully you caught that. 1 minus 4 is -3. Okay, so now I have two equations, two unknowns. So I set them up in a system. And if I multiply let's say the bottom one by -1, what that does is a sign changer. So it's going to make this negative, that positive, and that positive. So then when I go to add these, the y's fall out, and I have 2x equals 8. So it looks like x equals 4. You plug it back in. I won't show that. If you plug it back into one of the original equations, you should get y equals 3. And it doesn't just ask for x and y, it asks for the perimeter of this. So we kind of get rid of all these markings. And we just plug in x and y. It should go pretty quick. So 6 times 3, that's 18. I have 2x, so 2 times 4, which is obviously 8. So both of those are 8, so that's another 16. And then on this side, y equals 3. So that's 8. And then 4 plus 4 is also 8, so we have another 16. And you add those three up, and you get 50. So your perimeter is 50. Okay, this one I already have. I have the proportions set up. The key here, guys, is to see that 6 corresponds to the 9. All right, you're going to use that in both proportions to get started. 6 corresponds with 9, and then on the side there, 8 corresponds with x. Now, you notice that x is kp. It does not ask for kp, it asks for only rp. But think about this. If they give us, if we can find KP, which is X, I can subtract 8 away to get RP. So I cross multiply here, I get 6x equals 72, so X equals 12. So now that equals 12. 12 minus the 8 equals 4. I think that makes sense. So RP equals 4. OP is the bottom. I don't have to do anything like that. I just cross multiply. I get 6y equals 90. Looks like I get y equals 15. So OP equals 15. Number 5 flows a lot of the same in the same way. Okay, the small triangle, one strategy is to redraw the two triangles. You have a small triangle and a big triangle. This is 9 in the small triangle. This is 12 in the big. So I have a ratio that I can use, 9 to 12. So 9 corresponds with 12, and then it asks for PT. So if I set that up as X, nope, sorry, I know that. PT's right there. It is a good idea to label your parts, or label your vertices. All right, it asks for PT. So if I just look at this situation, I have 9 corresponding with 12, and X corresponds with 8. In the same token, I also know SV is 10. And since I'm finding something different, I'm going to use a different variable here to find ST, and that's Y. All right, so I can label that as a Y. Now, I know it didn't ask for ST, but it asked for TV. TV is just this little part right there, but if I know Y and I know 10, I'm going to be able to find TV. So the other ratio I'm going to set up is 9 to 12 equals Y to 10. And just for time purposes, you guys know how to solve a proportion. X equals 6, Y equals 7.5. So given that, PT equals 6, and TV equals the 10 minus the 7.5, which is 2.5. So TV equals 2.5. Okay, this one here, pretty much a straight proportion. It's asking for NE, and it's also asking for angle B. So let's do the proportion first. X corresponds with 18, and 20 corresponds with 30, not 10. GB is 30. When you solve this, X equals 12. So NE equals 12. And then we also know the three angles of a triangle add up to 180. So I take 180 minus the 55 minus the 90. It's 145. So it looks like that angle is 35. 35 degrees. Those three angles add up to 180. Okay, there was a theorem that we learned, and it said that the two remote interiors equal the exterior. So there's some questions on this with the 40 plus. These two, how do I put them together? Well, just drop the parentheses and add. So I have x plus 90 equals 2x plus 50. and solve a two-step equation. I would subtract x from both sides. Then subtract 50. So it looks like x equals 40. Now, it didn't ask me for x, it asked me for angle YZA, which is actually on the inside. So if I do 2 times 40 plus the 50, so that's 80 plus 50, that's 130. That outside angle is 130. That makes that 50. Number 8, very basic problem. You just have to make sure you match up the right parts, and we've used these not as congruency marks, but just to match up the corresponding parts. So the question is, does 15 correspond with 6, or does 20 correspond with 6? Well, that you can look back in the similarity statement. BC, that side right there, BC corresponds with PF. And then AB must correspond with PW. So that's my answer right there. So we're going to, X corresponds with 10. And 15 corresponds with 6. Cross multiply. X equals 25. So AC equals 25. Okay, this one's your classic shadow problem. The key here, guys, is seeing that this is not 12. It's 12 plus x. So if I'm redrawing my two triangles, there's the big triangle. That's 18. That's 12 plus x. The small triangle of the girl is 4.5 and x. So that's how you redraw that. And once you have that set up, 18 corresponds with 4.5, and 12 plus x corresponds with x. When you cross multiply, it might seem a little weird, but you get 18x equals 4.5 times that whole quantity, 12 plus x. So 4.5 times 12 is 54. You have to distribute this to both terms. Once I subtract 4.5x from both sides, and divide, you get x equals 4. So x actually happens to be her shadow. So how long is her shadow? It's 4 feet. Okay, this one here, I looked back in the section 2.8 if you have a question about this, but it's just angle 1. We know for certain that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. The reason being is if we look at the diagram below here, if the only thing that we know in the first situation is that these two are parallel, what happens if these are not parallel? So if this was actually like this, you notice that 5, angle 5, would be a lot different, all right, than 3. 5 and 3 are not guaranteed to be equal anymore. So the only ones that we know that are equal are 1 and 4. In the other case, if I know these two are equal, and technically angle 1 could be that different because we're not sure if that is parallel to the other line. So the only thing we know for sure is in the second case is 5 and 3. So the only answer 5 and 3 are congruent for the second situation. Okay, this one I just revealed the answers pretty quick, so take a look at that. Number 12, I told you to think of a parallelogram. That's what this symbol at the top in the given means. It's a parallelogram, and opposite sides are parallel. So we can look at a situation where we have two sets of parallel lines that are parallel. So if I transfer, I need A. So if you kind of redraw this, I think it might help you because you might have a little bit more room to plug this stuff in. It's kind of crammed, but we know that those two are co-interiors. All right, and in this drawing too, we know that any obtuse plus acute equals 180. So 8x minus 22 plus 2x plus 17 equals 180. So to save you some time here, I'm just going to go ahead. When you simplify all this, you should get 10x equals 185. So x would equal 18.5. Now you plug that back in, and they want angle C. So we do know that angle A, and angle C are the same. So that red and that green angle, they look the same, they are the same. So if I can find angle A, obviously by plugging 18.5 back into that expression, okay, so A equals 126 degrees, so C equals 126 degrees. All right, you notice I have the same setup for this one. In this case, it gave me angle B and angle D. They're both acute. They look the same. They are the same. So I know those two are the same. So obviously, set the two expressions equal to each other. And we should all know how to solve the two variables on both sides type of question. We get y equals 15. Once you have y equals 15, it asks for angle A. Well, if we find D, all right, so we find D's by plugging y back in. So that's 45 plus 11. That's 56. So if I think back that down here, that if this is 56, we know any obtuse plus acute makes 180. So I can do 180 minus the 56 and get 124. That's going to equal so angle A equals 124. Now, I found C, A is going to be the same thing. Okay, same idea. And this is going to be 56. Opposite angles of parallelograms are congruent. And that should take us through page 39.